February wind cut through the alley, behind Reed Innovations' newest development site. A luxury Aston Martin pulled into the executive parking space, its engine purring to silence as the driver's door swung open. Reed Innovations' founder and CEO stepped out, his tailored coat flapping in the breeze as he surveyed his latest billion-dollar project. He'd built an empire on sustainable energy, yet something felt missing in his perfectly ordered world. Welcome back to Mr. Raw Story Trail, where we bring you tales that not only entertain but leave you with life-changing insights. If you're new here, consider subscribing right now to join our community of story lovers. That little red button helps us grow and brings more incredible stories to your feed every day. Now, what would you do if you discovered the person carrying your children was living on the streets? A noise from behind the construction materials caught his attention. Something about the movement, graceful despite obvious distress, triggered a memory. The CEO moved closer, squinting into the shadows. A woman emerged, her face gaunt but beautiful, her hands protectively cradling a visibly pregnant belly. Their eyes locked across the distance. "What are you doing here?" he whispered, recognition dawning in slow, painful waves. The woman straightened her posture, summoning dignity despite her worn clothes and makeshift shelter. "Surviving," she answered simply. His gaze dropped to her swollen abdomen, and the world seemed to tilt beneath his feet. "Are you?" "Yes." Her voice carried no accusation, just fact. "Twins, actually." The CEO staggered backward, his tablet clattering to the ground. "Mine?" The word escaped as barely more than breath. "Yes." Her gaze never wavered. The space between them seemed charged with electricity. Months of unspoken words, missed connections, and life-altering consequences compressed into a single moment. He took in her surroundings with growing horror, the carefully arranged cardboard creating minimal shelter, a worn backpack containing what appeared to be her only possessions, the thin blanket that had clearly provided insufficient protection against the winter chill. Living like this? A small, bitter smile crossed her lips. About 4 months. The shelters fill up quickly in winter. His mind raced through calculations. 4 months homeless, at least 6 months pregnant. The timing aligned perfectly with their week together. Questions flooded his thoughts. Why hadn't she contacted him? How had this happened? Why was the mother of his children sleeping behind his construction site? "I tried calling you," she said, as if reading his thoughts. "Your assistant made it clear my calls weren't welcome." Understanding darkened his features. The protective barriers he'd built around his life, the gatekeepers, the filters, the layers of separation between himself and the outside world, had created this nightmare. His hands trembled as he processed the magnitude of what stood before him, not just a former lover, but the mother of his unborn children, fighting for survival on the streets while he lived in isolated luxury. "How far would you go to right a wrong you never knew you committed?" he whispered, more to himself than to her. "Please," the CEO extended his hand. "Come with me. Let me help you." The woman took a step back, wariness replacing recognition in her eyes. "I don't want your charity. This isn't charity." His voice cracked with emotion. "Those are my children, my responsibility." He paused, collecting himself. "Our responsibility." She studied him, weighing years of self-reliance against her current reality. The twins kicked inside her, a reminder of what was truly at stake. Her hand instinctively moved to her belly. "Today's story shows how life can change in an instant," the CEO said softly. "One moment I'm inspecting a building site. The next I'm discovering I'm going to be a father. To twins." He ran his hand through his hair, the gesture so familiar it made her heart ache. "Please, at least let me get you somewhere warm while we figure this out." The silence between them stretched, filled with unspoken history and uncertain future. Around them, construction workers began arriving for the day shift, curious glances thrown their way. "I have conditions," she finally said. Relief flooded his expression. "Name them. I won't be kept. This isn't about money or status. If I come with you, we're equals or nothing at all." The CEO nodded, a new respect dawning in his eyes. Even homeless and pregnant with his children, she refused to surrender her dignity. "Equal partners," he agreed, offering his hand again. This time, she took it. That moment at the construction site marked the beginning of an extraordinary journey, one that would test the boundaries of forgiveness, challenge preconceptions about privilege and responsibility, and ultimately redefine what it means to build a family from broken pieces. As the CEO helped gather her meager belongings, neither could have anticipated how their unexpected reunion would transform them both. His world of executive suites and billion-dollar deals seemed suddenly hollow compared to the weight of the discovery before him. Her world of daily survival had narrowed to protecting the lives growing inside her, never expecting that a random choice of shelter location would alter their trajectory forever. The luxury car that had seemed so ordinary to him minutes earlier now represented the vast gulf between their experiences. As he opened the passenger door, she hesitated once more. "What happens after today?" she asked, vulnerability briefly overtaking her practiced strength. "I don't know," he admitted honestly. "But we'll figure it out together." Her hand rested protectively over her belly. "They're all I have," she whispered. "Not anymore," he promised. As they drove away from the construction site, leaving behind her makeshift shelter, winter sunlight broke through the clouds, illuminating the city skyline he had helped build. The light caught the tears she had finally allowed to fall, tears of relief, uncertainty, and perhaps a glimmer of hope. Stay with me to discover how this shocking reunion transforms two lives forever, how a billionaire CEO and a homeless former hotel maid navigate the complicated path from strangers with a shared past to partners with a shared future. Their story reminds us that sometimes our greatest challenges lead to unexpected blessings, and that true connections can withstand even the harshest circumstances. Their journey together would prove that family isn't defined by convenience or convention, but by choice and commitment. It would demonstrate that wealth isn't measured solely in bank accounts, but in our capacity for compassion and growth. And most importantly, it would show that sometimes when we think we've lost everything, we're actually on the verge of finding what truly matters. This is a story about second chances, about dignity in the face of desperation, and about the remarkable power of human connection to heal even the deepest wounds. It's a reminder that sometimes the most meaningful relationships begin in the most unlikely circumstances, and that love, when given room to grow naturally, can bridge worlds that seem impossibly far apart. Reed Tower dominated the San Francisco skyline, 68 stories of sustainable architecture that gleamed like a beacon of innovation against the blue California sky. Within its glass walls, Reed Innovations occupied the top 15 floors, employing over 5,000 people in the headquarters alone. The man who built this empire sat in his corner office, reviewing quarterly projections that most executives would celebrate as extraordinary successes. For CEO Alexander Reed, however, they represented merely acceptable progress. "These energy efficiency numbers should be higher," he noted, scrolling through the report on his tablet. "We're still losing too much power in the transfer phase." His CFO shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, we're already 34% more efficient than our closest competitor." "Then we should be aiming for 50%. Reed set down the tablet. "Our mission isn't to be marginally better than companies destroying the planet. It's to fundamentally change how energy is produced and consumed." At 34, Alexander Reed had revolutionized sustainable energy with breakthrough battery technology that had made renewable sources viable alternatives to fossil fuels. His net worth had crossed the billion-dollar threshold 5 years ago, and financial publications routinely labeled him a visionary. What the glowing profiles failed to capture was his relentless drive, the force that kept him working 18-hour days and demanded perfection from everyone in his orbit. "The Singapore expansion is ahead of schedule," the CFO continued. "Construction completes next month, and operations begin 60 days after." Reed nodded, his mind already calculating the next steps. "Schedule my visit for final inspection. I want to be there personally when we power up." After the meeting concluded, Reed stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows, surveying the city below. From this height, San Francisco appeared orderly, efficient, a system functioning as designed. His reflection stared back at him, impeccably tailored suit, precisely trimmed dark hair, features that financial magazines had described as classically handsome and profiles he found increasingly intrusive. What those profiles never mentioned was the emptiness that seemed to expand with each professional achievement, a void no acquisition or technological breakthrough could fill. The private elevator whisked Reed to the penthouse suite that crowned the tower. The doors opened to 7,000 square feet of architectural perfection, open concept living spaces, museum-quality art, and panoramic views of the bay. Every element had been selected by renowned designers to create the ultimate urban sanctuary. Yet as Reed dropped his briefcase on the marble counter, the space echoed with a silence that seemed to mock its perfection. "Lights," he commanded, and the home automation system responded instantly. "Messages. You have 3 voice messages and 17 emails flagged as priority," the AI assistant reported in its pleasant, neutral voice. "Your dinner from Chez Michel will arrive in approximately 20 minutes. Would you like me to prepare the dining area?" "No." Reed loosened his tie. "I'll eat in the office while I work." The AI didn't judge his choice to dine alone at his desk for the 5th consecutive night. It simply acknowledged the command and adjusted the evening routine accordingly. Reed moved to the bar and poured himself 2 fingers of scotch, an 18-year-old single malt that cost more per bottle than many people earned in a week. He rarely noticed its complex flavor anymore. It had become merely another habit, like the designer clothes and luxury cars that comprise the expected trappings of success. The scotch burned pleasantly as he swallowed, providing a momentary distraction from the recognition that he'd created a life that perfectly met his professional ambitions, while failing entirely to address his personal needs. His phone chimed with a text from his mother. "Alex, the Children's Hospital Gala is next month. Please tell me you're attending this year." He sighed. His parents, retired professors who viewed his wealth with a mixture of pride and suspicion, remained his most direct connection to a life outside Reed Innovations. Their persistent efforts to draw him back to family gatherings and charitable events represented one of the few forces capable of pulling him from work. "I'll be there," he texted back, making a mental note to have his assistant block the evening. His mother's causes were among the few he prioritized, not out of obligation but because her dedication to helping underprivileged children had shaped his own ethical framework. What separated Reed Innovations from its competitors wasn't just technological superiority but the ethical principles embedded in its corporate DNA. Reed had built his company on 3 non-negotiable pillars: environmental responsibility, fair labor practices, and community investment. These weren't marketing slogans, but operational mandates that sometimes frustrated shareholders focused solely on quarterly returns. "Mr. Reed, these manufacturing standards exceed what's legally required by nearly 300%, his operations director had argued during the planning phase for their battery production facility. "It's adding millions to our costs. The legal minimum is an embarrassingly low bar," Reed had responded. "We're not building this company to meet minimum standards. We're building it to set new ones." This philosophy extended to every aspect of Reed Innovations. While other tech companies exploited overseas labor, Reed facilities worldwide maintained identical safety standards and proportional pay scales. Their profit-sharing program distributed 15% of annual profits among all employees, from executives to maintenance staff. Educational subsidies covered tuition for employees and their children. These policies had initially been dismissed as idealistic and financially unsustainable. 8 years later, Reed Innovations boasted the industry's lowest turnover rate, highest productivity metrics, and a waiting list of top talent eager to join the company. Reed's commitment to these principles stemmed not from abstract ideology, but from witnessing firsthand how corporate greed destroyed lives. His father's small electronics repair business had been systematically crushed by a multinational corporation that copied his patented innovations, then tied him up in legal battles until bankruptcy forced him to surrender his patents for pennies on the dollar. "Never forget that every business decision affects real people with real lives," his father had told him. "Profit without principle is just theft wearing a business suit." Reed had built his empire with that lesson carved into his conscience. Despite his professional ethics and success, Reed's personal life remained remarkably empty. His dating history consisted of brief relationships that inevitably crumbled under the weight of his work schedule and emotional unavailability. Friends had gradually accepted that invitations would be declined or canceled at the last minute until they simply stopped extending them. His executive assistant, Valerie Chen, had worked with him for 7 years and functioned as both gatekeeper and de facto personal manager. She scheduled his rare social appearances, managed his properties, and filtered the countless requests for his time and money. Her efficiency was legendary within the company, as was her protective instinct toward her boss. "Sir, your calendar for today includes 15 meetings, including the Renewable Energy Summit at 2 p.m. The R&D team needs your input on the new storage prototype, and HR requires approval for the expanded parental leave policy." Reed nodded, already reviewing data on his tablet. "Cancel anything non-essential. I need to focus on the Singapore expansion. All your meetings are essential, Mr. Reed. That's why they're on your calendar." Valerie's tone held the patient exasperation of someone who'd had this conversation hundreds of times. "And you haven't taken a day off in 11 months. I'll rest when we've hit our renewable energy goals. You said that about the battery breakthrough, and the IPO, and the European expansion." Valerie set a protein shake on his desk. "You need to eat something before the summit." Doctor's orders, this small act of concern, ensuring he ate during 18-hour workdays, represented one of the few personal connections in Reed's daily life. The fact that it came from an employee rather than family or friends spoke volumes about his isolation. That evening, Reed found himself standing on his penthouse balcony, watching lights flicker across the city. Each point of brightness represented lives being lived, families sharing meals, friends gathering, couples building futures together. Meanwhile, he stood alone in his perfect penthouse, unable to remember the last time he'd laughed genuinely or shared a meal that wasn't related to business. His phone buzzed with an alert about a community housing initiative near his newest development, a project he'd personally championed against shareholder resistance. The site would include affordable housing units alongside market-rate apartments, with priority given to families experiencing homelessness. Reed scrolled through the project details, a different kind of satisfaction warming him compared to his usual business accomplishments. This project wouldn't maximize profits, but it would transform lives, providing stability for people who had been forgotten by the economic boom that had made him wealthy. As he scheduled a personal site visit for the following week, Reed couldn't have known that this routine inspection would alter the trajectory of his carefully ordered life, or that his capacity for compassion, largely directed toward abstract causes rather than individuals, would soon be tested in ways he never imagined. The Marquis Hotel stood as a monument to luxury in downtown San Francisco, its ornate facade promising indulgence to those who could afford its $800 per night minimum. For 5 years, the young woman had moved invisibly through its corridors as head housekeeper, her crisp uniform and professional demeanor part of the carefully curated experience sold to wealthy guests. Excellence isn't an accident, she often told her staff. It's attention to detail repeated until it becomes instinct. This philosophy had elevated her from entry-level maid to head of housekeeping by age 27, an accomplishment built on relentless work ethic and natural leadership. Her department consistently received the highest guest satisfaction ratings, her teams functioned with military precision, and her standards became the benchmark against which other luxury properties measured themselves. Few guests ever noticed the woman who ensured their rooms were immaculate, their preferences remembered, their experience flawless. Fewer still recognized that the person straightening their sheets held a partial degree in environmental science, spoke 3 languages, or could discuss contemporary literature with more insight than many university professors. They see the uniform, not the person wearing it, she once explained to a new hire who felt invisible. That's not a limitation. It's an opportunity to observe, to learn, to understand people when they're not performing for you. This perspective had served her well, allowing her to navigate the complex social dynamics of luxury hospitality while maintaining her dignity. She knew which guests appreciated efficiency and which preferred elaborate service. She recognized which managers respected competence and which demanded deference. Most importantly, she understood that her worth wasn't determined by how others valued her labor, but by how she performed it. Your work ethic is your signature, her grandmother had taught her. Make it one you're proud to leave behind. The public library had become her sanctuary during the 4 hours between shelter, check-out, and check-in. While other homeless individuals sought warmth in coffee shops or transit stations, she claimed a quiet corner table where she could charge her aging phone and continue her education through free online courses. You're always studying something new, observed the librarian who had come to recognize her as a regular. What is it today? Sustainable urban development, she replied, gesturing to her screen where diagrams of rainwater collection systems filled the display. Cities waste tremendous resources. The solutions exist. What's missing is implementation. Her academic interests weren't random. Before life's complications had interrupted her formal education, she'd been 3 semesters away from completing her environmental science degree. Financial necessity had forced her to pause her studies, but she'd never abandoned her intellectual curiosity or her belief that education represented her path to stability. Between research sessions, she meticulously tracked job applications on a spreadsheet, 37 submissions in the past month alone. Despite excellent references from previous positions, her current circumstances created nearly insurmountable barriers. No permanent address, no reliable phone, no professional wardrobe, and increasingly the visible pregnancy that caused potential employers' expressions to shift from interest to concern during interviews. She understood their calculations. Hiring a pregnant woman meant accommodations, potential medical leave, scheduling complications. Adding homelessness to that equation made her an exceptional risk in their eyes. What they failed to see was how these very challenges had honed her problem-solving abilities and strengthened her determination. Each evening, she'd return to her temporary sanctuary in the women's shelter, where she'd claimed a corner bed. There, she would read scientific journals downloaded during her library sessions, take notes for future coursework, and occasionally allow herself to sketch designs for the sustainable communities she still dreamed of helping build. Most people here think I'm crazy, she confided to her shelter roommate, an elderly woman who had lost her housing after medical bankruptcy, studying while homeless and pregnant. Education is the one thing they can't take from you, the older woman replied. Everything else can be lost, but what's in your mind stays yours. The morning ritual had become second nature after 4 months of homelessness. Pack belongings efficiently, ensure all valuables remained on her person, plot the day's movement between public spaces where her presence wouldn't draw attention or harassment. Winter in San Francisco wasn't as harsh as in other cities, but the damp cold penetrated layers of clothing and settled into bones. The shelter provided evening accommodation when space permitted, but daytime hours required constant movement, a nomadic existence punctuated by strategic rest stops at libraries, community centers, and hospital waiting areas. Today, the rain complicated her carefully planned route. Her worn sneakers, donated by a church outreach program, leaked at the seams. The pregnancy had swollen her feet, making each step increasingly uncomfortable as she navigated between awnings and overhangs, seeking momentary shelter from the downpour. "Ma'am, you can't stay here," a security guard informed her as she paused under a corporate building's entrance canopy. "This is private property." She nodded politely, gathered her backpack, and continued walking without protest. Confrontation only attracted attention, and attention from authorities could lead to complications. Well-meaning social workers asking questions about her pregnancy, police officers directing her to services she'd already exhausted, or worst of all, inquiries about the father that she had no intention of answering. The pregnancy had reached 28 weeks, her belly now prominently visible beneath even her loosest clothing. The community clinic doctor had confirmed twins during her monthly checkup, a revelation that had initially terrified her before becoming her primary motivation for survival. "Your babies are developing normally," the doctor had assured her, "but you need more consistent nutrition and rest. Have you considered reaching out to family or the father?" She had deflected the question with practiced ease. Her family history, foster care after her parents' deaths, emancipation at 16, self-sufficiency since before adulthood, remained private. As for the baby's father, that complicated story stayed locked behind carefully constructed emotional walls. A church-run meal program provided lunch, vegetable soup, and a sandwich that she ate slowly, maximizing both nutrition and time spent in the heated building. She tucked an extra apple into her bag for later, calculating the hours until dinner would be available at the women's center across town. Between these destinations lay her most important appointment, the public library's computer lab, where she would check job listings, housing options, and email responses to her applications. Hope had become a carefully rationed resource, dispensed in small doses to prevent the crushing disappointment of repeated rejection. "You're carrying twins and living on the streets?" The intake coordinator at the Pregnancy Resource Center couldn't hide her shock. "What about the father? Family support?" "I'm handling it," came the measured response. "I just need information about the housing program you mentioned last month." The coordinator's expression shifted to sympathy, a reaction the young woman had come to dread more than outright judgment. Sympathy often preceded attempts to manage her situation according to others' perceptions of what she needed, rather than respecting her autonomy. "The waiting list is 8 months minimum," the coordinator admitted. "But given your situation, we could explore emergency placement options that would require surrendering certain decisions about my children's care," she finished. "I'm familiar with the requirements." This conversation had played out dozens of times across various support agencies. Help came with conditions: religious counseling, mandatory programs, supervision, restricted choices. For someone who had built her life on independence and self-determination, these requirements represented an unacceptable compromise. "Pride won't keep your babies warm," a shelter volunteer had once chided. "Neither will surrendering their mother's dignity," she had responded quietly. This fierce protection of her autonomy wasn't stubbornness but survival strategy. Experience had taught her that dependency created vulnerability, and vulnerability led to exploitation. From foster homes where affection came with expectations to workplaces where advancement required compromising boundaries, she had learned that independence, however difficult, offered the only reliable protection. Each evening in the shelter, she performed small rituals that maintained her sense of self, arranging her few possessions with precision, washing her face with care, writing in a journal purchased from a dollar store. These weren't acts of vanity, but affirmations that her circumstances didn't define her worth. The twins moved inside her, their movements increasingly distinct and purposeful. She placed her hands on her swollen belly, feeling their separate rhythms, already individual personalities developing within the shared space. "We'll be okay," she whispered, a promise she intended to keep regardless of cost. "I have a plan." The plan was methodical, secure part-time remote work using library computers, save enough for deposit on a room rental, rebuild stability one careful step at a time. The roadblocks were substantial but not insurmountable. She had overcome homelessness before, though never while pregnant. The twins complicated everything while simultaneously providing unshakable motivation. As she bedded down in the shelter that night, surrounded by women whose stories contained similar threads of resilience amid hardship, she reviewed her map of the downtown construction zones. Several new developments offered temporary shelter against winter weather, alcoves and service areas where security was minimal during overnight hours. She marked a promising location behind a sustainable energy development, noting its proximity to the clinic and public restrooms. Tomorrow she would investigate this potential refuge, another step in her careful strategy for survival. What she couldn't have known was that this practical decision would lead to an encounter that would transform her careful plans and challenge every boundary she had built to protect herself and her unborn children. 6 months earlier, the Marquis Hotel's presidential suite stood ready for inspection. The head housekeeper moved through the 2,500 square foot space with practiced efficiency, her trained eye, catching details others would miss: a slightly crooked painting, water spots on crystal glassware, a cushion that needed fluffing. The staff had 15 minutes to perfect every element before the VIP guest arrived. The east-facing windows need another polish, she instructed a team member, and replace these lilies with orchids. Mr. Reed specifically requested white orchids in his profile. The Marquis prided itself on personalizing experiences for elite guests, and Alexander Reed warranted special attention. Reed Innovations had booked the entire executive floor for a week-long clean energy conference, generating substantial revenue during the normally slow February season. "Is it true he's worth billions?" whispered a junior housekeeper, adjusting the orchid arrangement. "His net worth isn't our concern," the head housekeeper replied. "Our job is ensuring his stay meets Marquis standards, regardless of his bank account." This professional detachment had served her well throughout her career. Wealthy guests often behaved as if service staff were invisible, talking about private matters, displaying both their best and worst qualities when they believed no one of consequence was watching. She had learned to maintain appropriate boundaries while performing her duties with excellence. The presidential suite gleamed to perfection as the elevator chimed, signaling the guest's arrival. The housekeeping team filed out through the service entrance while the head housekeeper remained to perform a final check and welcome the guest personally, a courtesy extended to only the most prestigious clients. Alexander Reed entered the suite with his assistant. Their conversation focused on the conference schedule. At 34, Reed presented a striking figure, tall with athletic build maintained despite grueling work hours, dark hair showing, premature silver at the temples, and intelligent eyes that assessed the room with the same intensity he applied to business challenges. "Mr. Reed, welcome to the Marquis. I'm the head of housekeeping. If you require anything during your stay, please don't hesitate to contact me directly." She presented the specialized tablet used for guest requests. "Your preferences have been programmed into our system." Reed glanced up from his phone, his customary distraction momentarily broken by the professionalism in her voice. Unlike many guests who looked through service staff, he actually focused on her, a brief but genuine acknowledgement of her presence. "Thank you. I appreciate attention to detail." He accepted the tablet, noticing the orchids, white orchids. "Someone did their homework. The Marquis prides itself on personalized service, sir." As she turned to leave, Reed's assistant interjected. "Mr. Reed will need the conference documents delivered from the business center, his suits pressed immediately, and dinner served precisely at 8 p.m., regardless of whether he remembers to order it himself." "Of course, Miss Chen. We'll take care of everything." Reed looked up again, this time with mild amusement. "My assistant believes I'd forget to eat without intervention. The Marquis will ensure you don't starve on our watch, Mr. Reed." The comment escaped before she could censor it, a glimpse of personality beyond professional courtesy. A brief smile crossed his face, not the practiced expression he used for business photos, but something genuinely surprised. "I appreciate the rescue mission." The following morning, the head housekeeper received an urgent call from the executive housekeeping office. A stomach virus had incapacitated half the luxury floor staff. With the hotel at full capacity for the conference, they faced a critical shortage. "You'll need to personally handle the presidential suite until we can redistribute staff," the executive housekeeper instructed. Mr. Reed specifically commented on the quality of service. "We can't risk disappointing him." Though unusual for a department head to provide direct service, she approached the assignment with characteristic professionalism. When she arrived to refresh the suite during the conference sessions, she found it in surprisingly good order. Bed made with military precision, towels hung neatly, personal items organized methodically. Only the desk showed signs of intensive use. Papers arranged in careful stacks, multiple devices charging, empty coffee cups lined precisely at the edge. She refreshed the space without disturbing his organizational system, replacing the coffee service and adding a small plate of the dark chocolate truffles noted in his preference profile. When she returned that afternoon, Reed was unexpectedly in the suite, working intensely at his desk. "I apologize for the intrusion, Mr. Reed. I can return later." He glanced up, recognition flickering across his features. "No need. I won't even notice you're here." He returned to his work, fingers moving rapidly across his keyboard. She proceeded with discreet efficiency, moving silently through the suite while maintaining appropriate distance from the working executive. As she refreshed the coffee service, she noticed his cup was empty, but positioned just beyond his reach, the unconscious gesture of someone too absorbed in work to attend to basic needs. Without comment, she poured fresh coffee and placed it within reach. Reed looked up, momentarily startled by the small act of consideration. "Thank you." He picked up the cup, noticing the truffles. "Did you add these?" "They're listed in your guest profile, sir. Dark chocolate, 70% cacao minimum, no fillings." He studied her with increased interest. Most people ignore those preference details. Details matter. She continued her work, aware of his attention. "What's your name?" he asked suddenly. The question surprised her. Guests rarely sought personal information about staff. "I'm the head of housekeeping, sir." "That's your position, not your name." The distinction was unexpected from someone of his status. "Elena," she answered, using her professional name rather than her given one. Reed nodded, seeming satisfied with this small connection. "Thank you for the coffee, Elena." By the third day, an unusual pattern had emerged. Reed began returning to the suite during scheduled housekeeping times, his presence creating a strange dynamic, not quite friendship, but beyond the typical guest-staff relationship. Their interactions remained professional but increasingly personal. "You rearranged my books," he observed, noticing the environmental science texts she had organized. "Only by subject. I noticed you were referencing them for your presentation." She continued replacing linens, maintaining professional distance. "You understand environmental science classification?" She hesitated, then admitted, "I studied it for 3 years at Berkeley before financial constraints intervened." This revelation clearly surprised him. "Yet you're working in hospitality?" "Life rarely follows a linear path, Mr. Reed. Education continues outside university walls." Their conversation shifted to sustainable architecture, the topic of his keynote address. To his evident surprise, she offered insights about urban water reclamation that hadn't appeared in his research. "That's actually brilliant," he acknowledged. "Where did you encounter that application?" "I designed it for a final project before leaving school." She maintained her work rhythm, the admission casual despite its significance. Reed set aside his tablet, fully engaged for the first time. "Would you show me?" The request crossed professional boundaries, but his genuine interest in her work rather than her personally created safe intellectual territory. She sketched the system on hotel stationery, explaining reclamation principles with growing animation. Reed asked incisive questions, treating her ideas with the same seriousness he would afford a colleague. For a moment, the power imbalance between billionaire CEO and hotel housekeeper dissolved, replaced by two minds engaged in solving common problems. When she finished, Reed studied the sketch with evident admiration. "You should be designing these systems professionally, not making beds." "Perhaps someday," she replied, returning to her duties. "For now, this work has its own dignity." Her response seemed to intrigue him further, her lack of apology for her current position, her refusal to diminish its value despite his implied hierarchy. "Most people would have agreed with me," he observed. "I'm not most people, Mr. Reed." She gathered her supplies, preparing to leave. "No," he agreed thoughtfully. "You certainly aren't." By the conference's final evening, their daily conversations had created an unexpected connection. Reed had shared insights about renewable energy markets. She had offered perspectives on practical applications that overlooked theorists often missed. Their discussions remained primarily intellectual, though an undeniable current of attraction had developed beneath the professional exchange. When she arrived to prepare the suite for evening turn-down service, she found Reed standing by the window, contemplating the city lights. A bottle of champagne chilled in an ice bucket, 2 glasses waiting nearby. "I hope I'm not interrupting," she said, hesitating at the threshold. "Actually, I was hoping you'd join me." He gestured to the champagne. "To thank you for the conversations. Your water reclamation concept improved my keynote considerably on today's agenda." The invitation crossed every professional boundary, yet something in his expression, genuine appreciation rather than entitlement, made her pause rather than refuse outright. "That would be inappropriate, Mr. Reed. I'm still on duty. When does your shift end?" The question hung between them, simple yet laden with implications. After 5 years maintaining perfect professional boundaries, she found herself calculating the minutes until her official responsibilities concluded. 1 hour, she answered, surprising herself. I'll order dinner, he replied, not presuming her agreement but offering the possibility. No expectations beyond conversation. You have my word. Have you ever experienced that pivotal moment when something unexpected changes your life's direction? When a simple decision leads to consequences you never imagined? Like, comment, and subscribe. If you've ever had a chance encounter that transformed your future, I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. 1 hour later, she returned to the presidential suite in her own clothes rather than her uniform, a simple dress that transformed her from staff to individual. The distinction wasn't lost on Reed, whose expression reflected appreciation beyond physical attraction. Dinner progressed from professional discussions to personal revelations. Reed described growing up watching his father's electronics business crushed by corporate predators, the formative experience that shaped his ethical business practices. She shared her journey through foster care after losing her parents, her determination to create stability through education and hard work. We both built ourselves from difficult beginnings, Reed observed, refilling their glasses. Different paths, but similar drivers. The difference being you succeeded while I'm still building. Success is relative, he countered. I've built a company but not much of a life around it. You seem to have maintained your principles intact. That's rarer than financial achievement. The evening deepened, conversation flowing as naturally as if they'd known each other for years rather than days. When Reed moved to refill her glass again, his hand brushed hers, the first physical contact between them. The simple touch crystallized the connection that had been building throughout the week. Their eyes met, mutual recognition passing between them. The professional boundaries that had defined their interactions dissolved completely as he leaned forward, pausing just short of kissing her, giving her the choice to close the distance or maintain separation. She chose connection, bridging the gap between their worlds. Dawn light filtered through the suite's windows, illuminating intertwined figures still asleep in the massive bed. The head housekeeper woke first, momentary disorientation giving way to remembrance as she felt Reed's arm draped across her waist. The night had transcended physical attraction, revealing genuine connection between two people who recognized something familiar in each other despite vastly different circumstances. Their conversations between moments of passion had explored dreams, fears, and possibilities that felt surprisingly aligned despite their different worlds. Reed stirred beside her, consciousness bringing immediate recognition rather than regret. His fingers traced her cheek with unexpected tenderness. Stay, he murmured. Order breakfast. My flight doesn't leave until afternoon. Reality intruded on the brief sanctuary they'd created. I can't. My team will notice my absence. The practical reminder of their different responsibilities created the first awkwardness between them. Reed sat up, running his hand through disheveled hair. This wasn't just, he began. I know. She slipped from bed, gathering her clothes with practiced efficiency. Neither of us planned this. I'm leaving for Singapore today. 3 months minimum for our Asia expansion. He watched her dress, the CEO momentarily uncertain. I want to see you when I return. She paused, considering implications. Is that realistic? Our worlds don't exactly overlap. They did last night. He reached for her hand. Exchange numbers. When I'm back, we'll figure out what this is without hotel protocols between us. The request seemed reasonable, acknowledging connection without demanding immediate definition. She entered her number in his phone, allowing herself to imagine possibilities beyond their unlikely beginning. Reed dressed for his departure, transformation back to corporate leader visible in each precise movement. At the door, he paused. This week was unexpected, he said simply, in the best possible way, for me as well. She allowed herself one last moment of connection, straightening his tie with the same care she'd apply to any detail. Safe travels, Alexander. He caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm, a gesture more intimate than passion. I'll call when I return. That's a promise. The door closed between them, separating their worlds once more. Neither could have predicted the circumstances under which they would next meet, how profoundly their lives would change in the intervening months, or how that night would produce consequences beyond anything they'd imagined during their week of unexpected connection. 8 weeks after the energy conference, Elena stood in the employee restroom of the Marquis Hotel, staring at the plastic test strip that had just altered her future. 2 pink lines, unmistakable in their clarity and implications. She took a deep breath, steadying herself against the sink. A baby, Alexander Reed's baby. The initial shock gave way to mental calculations. She'd always been meticulous about health precautions, but their night together had been spontaneous, passionate, careful planning abandoned in the moment. Now, Consequences materialized in the form of 2 pink lines. Elena wasn't one for self-pity. By the time she'd composed herself and returned to her duties, she'd already begun formulating a plan. Her savings were modest but carefully managed. Her health insurance through the hotel would cover prenatal care. Her apartment, though small, could accommodate a nursery space with reorganization. A child hadn't figured into her 5-year strategy, finish her degree, advance to hotel management, eventually transition to environmental consulting. But adaptability had been her lifelong strength. This detour would require adjustments, not abandonment of her goals. The father, however, presented a complication she couldn't easily resolve. Alexander Reed occupied a world vastly different from hers. Private jets, international business, media scrutiny. Their connection, however genuine during that week, existed in a bubble outside normal reality. He deserves to know, she told her reflection that evening, not because she expected or needed his support, but because ethical principles demanded honesty. She'd wait 1 more week to be certain, then make the call. She owed him that much, regardless of what came after. Elena's first attempt to reach Alexander came exactly 9 weeks after their night together. She'd confirmed the pregnancy with her doctor, learned everything appeared normal, and rehearsed what she would say, direct, factual, without expectations. "Reed Innovations, how may I direct your call?" The receptionist's polished voice conveyed the company's prestigious status. "I need to speak with Alexander Reed. It's a personal matter. Mr. Reed doesn't take personal calls through the main switchboard. May I connect you with his executive office?" The call transferred to a different voice, crisp, efficient, slightly impatient. "Executive office, Valerie Chen speaking. I need to speak with Alexander Reed regarding an urgent personal matter." The assistant's tone cooled immediately. "Mr. Reed is currently unavailable. He's overseeing our Singapore expansion and not taking personal calls. May I ask what this concerns?" Elena hesitated. Revealing her pregnancy to an assistant felt inappropriate, yet she needed to convey sufficient urgency. "It's a private matter from his stay at the Marquess Hotel in February. He'll want to know about this development." The pause that followed contained clear suspicion. "I see. And your name is?" "Elena Martinez. I'm the head of housekeeping at the Marquis." Another pause, longer this time. "A housekeeper." The words carried unmistakable judgment. "Ms. Martinez, I manage Mr. Reed's personal affairs while he's abroad. He receives numerous claims from women after business trips. I'll need more information before disturbing him." The implication stung, transforming Elena's professional composure to cold dignity. "I'm not making claims, Miss Chen. I'm attempting to communicate important information directly to Mr. Reed. Please have him call me when he's available." "Of course," came the response, tone suggesting the message would never reach its intended recipient. "I'll add your name to the contact list." 7 more attempts over the following 2 weeks yielded identical results. Polite dismissals, requests for details she refused to provide, assurances that messages would be delivered. Alexander never called. By the 3rd week, his assistant stopped pretending. "Ms. Martinez, continuing to call is becoming harassment. Mr. Reed has been informed of your attempts to contact him and has declined to respond. I suggest you pursue whatever personal matter this is through proper channels." Elena set down the phone, understanding finally settling over her. Alexander hadn't rejected her message. He'd never received it. His assistant had assessed Elena's position, made assumptions about her motives, and filtered her out like spam email. The realization brought neither comfort nor actionable recourse. Breaking through the layers of protection surrounding a billionaire would require measures beyond her current capacity, especially as her pregnancy progressed and her professional situation deteriorated. The whispers began in the employee break room, hushed conversations that ceased when Elena entered, concerned glances from colleagues who had previously treated her with respect. The timing correlated precisely with her visible pregnancy and failed attempts to contact Reed Innovations. "Ms. Martinez, could you join me in my office?" The hotel manager's summons came midway through her shift, his expression unreadable as he closed the door behind her. Elena had anticipated this conversation, had prepared for its inevitability, yet the reality still struck with unexpected force. "There have been concerns raised about your professional conduct during the Clean Energy Conference." The manager avoided direct eye contact, focusing on the personnel file open before him, specifically regarding interactions with a high-profile guest. Elena maintained her composure. "My conduct has always been professional, Mr. Daniels. Your condition suggests otherwise." His glance at her midsection made the accusation explicit. "The timing aligns precisely with Mr. Reed's stay. My personal life is not relevant to my job performance, which has been exemplary for 5 years. Under normal circumstances, I would agree. He closed the file. However, the Marquis maintains certain standards. Our elite clientele expect discretion and professionalism. The appearance of impropriety can damage our reputation. The conversation proceeded with bureaucratic inevitability, references to image concerns, reputation management, appropriate separation between staff and guests. The conclusion had been predetermined: termination with 2 weeks severance, health care coverage through the month, and a carefully worded reference that would make future hotel employment virtually impossible. This isn't about performance, the manager conceded in a rare moment of honesty. Corporate received a call from Reed Innovations' executive office inquiring about our harassment prevention policies regarding guests. Someone has connected dots we cannot afford to have connected. Elena understood immediately. Valerie Chen hadn't merely blocked her calls. She'd actively eliminated what she perceived as a threat to her employer. A simple inquiry framed as concern about harassment policies had accomplished what direct confrontation could not. I understand, Elena replied, maintaining dignity despite the injustice. I'll collect my things. As she packed her office, Elena calculated her options with pragmatic efficiency. Her savings would cover 3 months of expenses at current rates. Job prospects in luxury hospitality were now compromised. The pregnancy would soon be obvious to potential employers in any field. Her hand rested briefly on her stomach, the first outward acknowledgement of the life growing within. "Just us now," she whispered. "We'll manage." She walked out of the Marquis Hotel for the final time. 5 years of exemplary service reduced to a cardboard box and brewing scandal. The unfairness might have broken someone with less resilience, but Elena had survived greater challenges. This setback, however significant, would not define her future or her child's. The transition from stable employment to precarious existence happened with devastating efficiency. Elena's apartment building required proof of income for lease renewal, documentation she could no longer provide. Job applications yielded promising interviews that cooled when background checks revealed her termination from the Marquis. Her carefully constructed life began unraveling thread by thread. By the 5th month of pregnancy, Elena had relocated to a weekly rate motel, her savings dwindling with alarming speed. The community clinic confirmed what she'd begun to suspect. She was carrying twins, explaining her rapidly changing body and increased nutritional needs. Twins require additional monitoring, the doctor advised. Your blood pressure is elevated, and you're underweight for this stage of pregnancy. Elena adjusted her budget, prioritizing prenatal vitamins and proper nutrition over housing stability. When the choice became food versus shelter, she moved her remaining possessions into her 10-year-old Honda Civic, the last vestige of her previous life. The car provided temporary housing while she navigated the complex system of shelters, assistance programs, and community resources. Her background in management proved unexpectedly valuable in this new reality. She approached homelessness as a logistical challenge rather than a personal failure. Each morning, she mapped efficient routes between resources: breakfast at the church mission, prenatal checkup at the community clinic, job applications at the library's computer center, dinner at the women's shelter, sleep in the car when shelter beds were full. The nights proved hardest, physical discomfort compounded by awareness of how dramatically her circumstances had changed. During one particularly difficult evening, cramped in her reclined driver's seat, she felt the first definitive movements of the twins, small flutters that confirmed their growth despite everything. "We'll get through this," she promised them, her hand pressed against her expanding belly. "This is temporary. I have a plan." The plan evolved with each new obstacle. When her car was towed from an overnight parking spot, she lost her mobile shelter and most of her remaining possessions. When winter temperatures dropped below safety thresholds, she mapped heating centers and 24-hour establishments where she could warm herself without arousing suspicion. Through it all, she maintained the one thing no circumstance could take: her dignity. She kept herself clean using facility restrooms, preserved her professional appearance as much as possible, and continued applying for remote work positions that wouldn't require explanation of her housing situation. The community clinic became her anchor in the increasingly unstable world of homelessness. Monthly checkups confirmed the twins continued developing normally despite her circumstances, a miracle she attributed to sheer determination and careful resource management. Identical girls, the ultrasound technician informed her during her 6-month scan, both measuring right on track. The news transformed abstract responsibility into specific, motivating reality. Not just babies, but daughters. 2 little girls who would rely entirely on her strength and planning. The knowledge crystallized her determination into something unbreakable. When heavy December rains made outdoor sleeping impossible, Elena began researching construction sites with accessible sheltered areas. The Reed Innovations downtown development appeared on city permits, a multi-use building with environmental features that would normally interest her professionally. The irony wasn't lost on her, seeking shelter in the shadow of the empire built by her children's absent father. Yet pragmatism overrode symbolism. The site offered what she needed: construction materials creating windbreaks, security patrols providing safety without excessive scrutiny, and proximity to the community clinic for ongoing prenatal care. 8 more weeks until these little ones could safely arrive, the doctor had told her at her last appointment. Though with twins, earlier delivery is common, 8 weeks felt simultaneously eternal and impossible. Her body strained under the pregnancy's demands, exhaustion a constant companion as she navigated survival with increasingly limited resources. Yet each morning she rose from whatever makeshift bed she'd secured, washed her face with cold water, arranged her appearance as best possible, and continued moving forward. Applications, resources, planning, surviving. The twins responded to her voice now, shifting position when she spoke to them during quiet moments. She told them stories of resilience, historical figures who overcame impossible odds, fictional characters who transformed challenges into triumphs, her own journey from foster care to self-sufficiency. Life doesn't always follow the path we expect, she explained, huddled beneath a tarp during a particularly cold night. But adaptation creates strength. We adjust, overcome, and continue forward. She never mentioned their father directly. The twins would know their origin eventually, but she refused to build their narrative around abandonment or rescue fantasies. They would understand themselves as products of strength rather than circumstance, children whose mother had faced extraordinary challenges with dignity intact. As February's chill penetrated her makeshift shelter behind the Reed Innovations construction site, Elena arranged her few remaining possessions with characteristic precision. Among them, a notebook contained detailed plans for after the twins' birth, housing options, employment possibilities, education strategies. The future remained uncertain, resources dangerously limited, but her resolve had never been stronger. Whatever came next, she would face it with the same determination that had carried her through every previous challenge, not just for herself now, but for the daughters who deserved every opportunity she could create for them. What she couldn't have anticipated was how dramatically her careful plans would change the following morning, when the architect of both the building rising before her and the children growing within her would unexpectedly re-enter her life, altering their trajectory in ways neither could have predicted during their brief connection months before. The February dawn broke cold and clear over San Francisco, painting the downtown skyline in muted gold. Construction crews wouldn't arrive for another hour, leaving the Reed Innovations development site momentarily peaceful, concrete bones of future greatness stretching toward the sky, promise contained in every beam and cable. Elena woke before sunrise, her body's internal clock unaffected by circumstance. 7 months pregnant with twins, simple movements had become complicated negotiations between determination and physical limitation. She emerged from her makeshift shelter, a carefully constructed windbreak utilizing construction tarps and discarded materials, and began her morning routine with practiced efficiency. A plastic bottle filled with water from a nearby park fountain served for basic hygiene. A granola bar from her carefully rationed supplies provided breakfast. Her few possessions arranged neatly in her backpack prepared her for quick departure should security arrive earlier than usual. The twins stirred within her, their movements growing stronger each week. "Good morning, little ones," she murmured, hands cradling her prominent belly. Another day of adventure ahead. Adventure, the word transformed hardship into something manageable, a narrative she could control rather than circumstance controlling her. 7 months homeless had taught Elena to reframe challenges, to find dignity in situations designed to strip it away. The construction site had proved an ideal temporary haven during the coldest weeks of winter. Its concrete walls blocked biting wind, security patrols deterred harassment without noticing her hidden corner, and its proximity to the community clinic allowed her to maintain prenatal care without exhausting limited energy on transportation. That particular morning she'd scheduled additional tasks: refill her water bottle at the public fountain, check job listings at the library, attend her weekly prenatal appointment, and investigate a possible part-time remote data entry position. Her day planned to the minute, maximizing efficiency while conserving strength. As she folded her blanket, a donation from a church outreach program, Elena heard an unexpected sound, a luxury car pulling into the executive parking area hours before normal arrivals. Security protocols meant immediate departure, abandoning her temporary sanctuary for safety elsewhere. She moved quickly, gathering essentials while leaving the tarps that would take too long to dismantle. The twins protested the sudden movement, a sharp kick making her wince as she shouldered her backpack and prepared to slip away through her planned escape route. Too late. The car door opened, Alexander Reed stepped from his Aston Martin, tablet in hand, prepared for a routine inspection of the development's environmental systems before the workday began. 3 months in Singapore had finalized the Asian expansion. Now back in San Francisco, he intended to refocus on domestic projects with the same intensity that characterized his management style. Sleep had eluded him since returning, jet lag compounded by a strange emptiness he attributed to post-project letdown. His thoughts had drifted frequently to the week at the Marquis, to conversations about sustainable design with the head housekeeper, whose perspective had enhanced his conference presentation. Elena. He'd intended to contact her upon returning, but Singapore's challenges had consumed him entirely. The thought rose unexpectedly. Perhaps he should visit the Marquis this week, see if their connection remained without the artificial environment of luxury accommodation. Lost in contemplation, Reed almost missed the movement behind the material storage area, a quick shadow that triggered his peripheral vision. Security concerns prompted his initial reaction. "Who's there?" he called, moving toward the disturbance. "This is private property." The figure emerged reluctantly from behind stacked materials, a woman in practical worn clothing, backpack slung over one shoulder. Something about her posture triggered recognition before her face became visible, the precise economy of movement, the inherent grace despite obvious effort. When she turned fully toward him, Reed stopped abruptly, certainty and disbelief battling across his features. "Elena?" Her name escaped as question rather than statement. The immaculate head housekeeper from the Marquis now stood before him in completely altered circumstances, her face thinner but unmistakable, her condition immediately apparent. Reed's tablet slipped from suddenly nerveless fingers, clattering against concrete, as his mind processed what his eyes presented. Elena, pregnant, emerging from what appeared to be a makeshift shelter on his construction site. The implications assembled themselves in rapid, horrible succession. Pregnant, approximately 7 months based on visible evidence, timeline aligning precisely with their night together. Living on his construction site. Homeless. "What are you doing here?" he managed, voice barely audible. Elena straightened, summoning dignity despite everything. "Surviving." Reed's gaze dropped to her swollen abdomen, understanding dawning in slow, painful waves. "Are you—" "Yes." Her voice carried no accusation, just fact. "Twins, actually." The simple confirmation staggered him more effectively than any physical blow. Reed took an involuntary step backward, mind reeling with implications. "Mine?" The word escaped as barely more than breath. "Yes." Her gaze never wavered. Time seemed suspended between them. Months of unspoken words, missed connections, and life-altering consequences compressed into a single moment. Reed struggled to process the scene before him, to reconcile the poised professional he'd connected with against this reality of her living homeless while carrying his children. "How long have you been—" He couldn't finish the sentence, the reality too painful to voice. "Living like this?" A small, bitter smile crossed her lips. "About 4 months. The shelters fill up quickly in winter." His mind raced through calculations: 4 months homeless, 7 months pregnant. The timing aligned perfectly with their week together. Questions flooded his thoughts. Why hadn't she contacted him? How had this happened? Why was the mother of his children sleeping behind his construction site? "I tried calling you," she said, as if reading his thoughts. "Your assistant made it clear my calls weren't welcome." Understanding darkened his features. Valerie's protective filtering suddenly took on sinister implications. How many other important matters had been deemed irrelevant to his attention? Is it right to judge someone when you don't know their full story? Has someone ever made assumptions about your life without knowing your struggles? If this story has you thinking about hidden truths and second chances, hit that like button and subscribe. Leave a comment about a time when appearances didn't tell the whole story. I read every comment. "Valerie never told me you called." Reed ran his hand through his hair, distress evident in every movement. "I had no idea, Lena. You have to believe that. If I'd known—" "You'd have what?" She interrupted, protective hands cradling her belly. "Sent money. Handled the PR problem. Had your legal team draft custody agreements." The accusation struck him physically. "I would have been there. Immediately. Without question." "You don't know that," Elena replied, years of self-reliance evident in her tone. "Neither of us does. We spent 1 week together. 1 week that created 2 lives, Reed countered, gesturing toward her belly. 2 lives I have responsibility for." Elena studied him, weighing years of learned caution against desperation. "I tried reaching you for weeks. Your assistant blocked every attempt. Eventually, she contacted the Marquis with vague allegations about harassment, which cost me my position. Without income, I lost my apartment. Without an address, I couldn't secure new employment." Each sentence landed like an indictment. Though Reed recognized the accusation lay not with him directly, but with systems he had created, protective barriers that had functioned too effectively, insulating him from consequences while transferring them entirely to her. Elena, I swear I knew nothing about this. I was in Singapore overseeing our expansion. Valerie filters countless contacts, but this, he gestured helplessly, this should never have been filtered. It doesn't matter now. Elena adjusted her backpack, preparing to leave. I've managed this far. I'll continue managing. It matters completely. Reed moved closer, careful to maintain appropriate distance. Those are my children. You're carrying my children and sleeping on a construction site in winter. Everything about this matters. Elena's expression hardened. They became exclusively my children when your systems eliminated my ability to reach you. I've carried them alone, protected them alone, planned for them alone. Your sudden appearance doesn't change that reality. Reed flinched at the justified anger in her voice, but held his ground. You're right to be angry. I failed you, not intentionally, but through negligence and insulation from consequences. That stops now. His gaze swept over her makeshift shelter, the minimal possessions, the evidence of careful survival despite impossible circumstances. What struck him most wasn't the poverty, but the organization. Even homeless, Elena maintained the precise attention to detail he'd first noticed at the marquee. Where were you planning to deliver them? He asked softly. The question penetrated her defensive wall, revealing vulnerability she'd concealed beneath anger. The community clinic has arrangements with County Hospital. They have a program for women in my situation, and after delivery, where would you and our daughters go? Daughters? The word caught her by surprise. You said twins. Are they girls? Elena nodded, momentarily disarmed by his immediate acceptance of paternity and his interest in details beyond the obvious crisis. Identical, she confirmed. The doctor says they're developing normally despite everything. Reed closed his eyes briefly, emotion overwhelming his usual controlled demeanor. When he spoke again, his voice carried raw sincerity. I can't change what's happened. I can't give you back months of security and comfort you deserved. But I can ensure that from this moment forward, you and our daughters have everything you need. I don't want your money, Elena stated firmly, pride evident despite her circumstances. I'm not offering money, Reed countered. I'm offering help. There's a difference. Semantics. Your help comes with strings attached. It always does. What strings are you imagining? Elena's expression revealed years of hard-earned wariness. Control. Ownership. Your world absorbing mine until I'm an accessory to your narrative rather than an equal in our children's lives. The assessment stunned Reed with its perception. Most people in her position would accept assistance without question. The fact that she prioritized autonomy over immediate comfort revealed character he couldn't help but respect. What if we establish clear boundaries? He proposed. Independent living arrangements where you maintain complete autonomy. Medical care for you and the twins without obligation. Time to determine what relationship, if any, makes sense beyond co-parenting. Elena studied him, searching for deception or manipulation in his offer. Why would you agree to those terms? Because they're reasonable, Reed answered simply. Because our daughters deserve stability without their parents' relationship being forced by circumstance. Because you've demonstrated extraordinary strength and dignity that commands respect. His honesty disarmed her more effectively than rehearsed persuasion could have. For the first time since their unexpected reunion, Elena's expression softened slightly. I need to think, she said finally. This isn't just about me anymore. Of course, Reed respected her need for space while recognizing the absurdity of leaving her in these conditions. May I suggest a compromise? Come with me now to get warm, have a proper meal, and rest safely while you consider options. No permanent decisions required today. Elena weighed immediate needs against long-term independence. The twins moved inside her, their increasing strength a constant reminder of responsibilities beyond her personal principles. I have conditions, she finally said. Reed nodded, relief evident. Name them. I maintain my independence. This isn't about money or status. If I come with you, we're equals or nothing at all. Equal partners, he agreed without hesitation. In raising our daughters and determining what comes next, I'll need everything in writing. Clear agreements about living arrangements, financial support, and parental rights. My legal team will draft whatever documents you require, with independent counsel representing your interests. Elena considered his responses, finding no evidence of the controlling behavior she'd feared. After months of constant vigilance and self-reliance, the prospect of safety, however temporary, proved powerfully persuasive. One day at a time, she conceded, accepting his outstretched hand, starting with today. As Reed helped gather her minimal possessions, they both recognized the surreal nature of their situation, a billionaire CEO and Homeless former housekeeper, connected by unexpected circumstances, yet discovering common ground in their concern for the children they'd created. The luxury car that had seemed so ordinary to him minutes earlier now represented the vast gulf between their experiences. As he opened the passenger door, Elena hesitated once more. "What happens after today?" she asked, vulnerability briefly overtaking her practiced strength. "I don't know," Reed admitted honestly, "but we'll figure it out together." Their journey forward would prove challenging beyond anything either had anticipated, navigating vastly different backgrounds, establishing trust after significant breakdown, and creating family from the most unlikely beginning. Yet in that moment of tentative agreement, both recognized something fundamental. Their daughters deserved parents who could overcome personal differences to provide stability, security, and the opportunity to thrive. For two people accustomed to controlling their separate worlds, surrendering to this unexpected shared future represented perhaps their greatest challenge, and potentially their most meaningful achievement. The Reed estate sprawled across 3 acres in the exclusive Pacific Heights neighborhood, the main residence a modernist masterpiece of glass and sustainable materials overlooking the Golden Gate Bridge. What interested Elena, however, wasn't the architectural showcase featured in design magazines, but the modest guest house nestled at the property's edge, a self-contained cottage with its own entrance and garden. "This would be your space," Alexander explained as he unlocked the door. "Completely private, secured separately from the main house." Elena entered cautiously, surveying the interior with practiced assessment. 1,000 square feet of thoughtfully designed living space. Open kitchen with high-end appliances, comfortable living area, bedroom with adjoining nursery alcove, and office nook equipped with modern technology. "The property manager maintains it for visiting executives," Alexander continued, watching her reaction carefully. "No one has stayed here in months." Elena moved through the space methodically, testing water pressure, examining closet space, noting sightlines and exit points, habits developed during months of precarious shelter situations. The cottage offered security without confinement, proximity without intrusion. "This would be temporary," she clarified, establishing boundaries immediately, "until I secure employment and appropriate housing for the twins and myself." Alexander nodded, respecting her need for independence despite his instinct to offer permanent arrangements. "Of course. My only request is that you remain until after delivery and initial recovery. Medical considerations make that reasonable." Elena considered his terms, weighing pride against practicality. The twins shifted inside her, their movements increasingly vigorous as space diminished. Her hand rested protectively over them. 2 months, she agreed finally, with clear understanding that I maintain complete autonomy over my schedule, visitors, and decisions. Absolutely. Alexander's relief was visible despite his attempt at professional detachment. "I've scheduled an appointment with the family attorney tomorrow to formalize support arrangements and parental rights. You'll have independent counsel representing your interests." The careful legal consideration impressed Elena more than grand gestures might have, evidence that he approached their situation with seriousness rather than emotional impulse. As Alexander prepared to leave her to settle in, Elena noticed groceries stocked in the refrigerator, prenatal vitamins on the counter, and a stack of new maternity clothing discreetly placed in the bedroom, necessities provided without fanfare or expectation of gratitude. "Thank you," she said simply. Alexander paused at the door. "I'm staying in the main house if you need anything. No pressure to interact beyond what feels comfortable." His sensitivity to her need for space, both physical and emotional, represented the first tentative step toward rebuilding trust broken by circumstance rather than intention. As the door closed behind him, Elena allowed herself the first deep breath in months, shoulders relaxing incrementally as security replaced constant vigilance. The first week established careful rhythms between two people connected by impending parenthood, yet separated by experience and caution. Elena settled into the guest house, reclaiming routines of normalcy, regular meals, uninterrupted sleep, proper prenatal care through Alexander's family physician. Alexander maintained professional distance, providing necessities without intrusion, respecting boundaries while remaining accessible. Their interactions remained formally polite, conversations limited to practical matters regarding the pregnancy and future arrangements. Legal documents codified support provisions and shared custody frameworks, Elena insisting on clear delineation of parental responsibilities and financial expectations. "These provisions seem unnecessarily modest," Alexander's attorney noted during review sessions. "Mr. Reed is prepared to offer substantially more comprehensive support. The proposed arrangements meet my needs while maintaining appropriate independence," Elena responded firmly. "I'm not interested in leveraging the situation for personal gain." Her unwavering principles impressed even the cynical family attorney, who had witnessed countless custody negotiations deteriorate into financial combat. Alexander, observing from the periphery, found his respect deepening for the woman carrying his children, her dignity intact despite circumstances that would have compromised many. The attorney drafted final documents reflecting Elena's preferences, medical support through delivery and recovery, educational trust funds for the twins, modest living stipend until she secured employment, and equally shared custody structured around the children's needs rather than parental convenience. "You're entitled to significantly more," Alexander noted when they reviewed final terms privately. Elena met his gaze directly. "I'm entitled to respect and equal partnership in raising our daughters. Everything else is negotiable." By the second week, their careful distance began showing subtle cracks, not through dramatic confrontation, but through small, unplanned moments of connection. Alexander noticed Elena's interest in architectural journals left in the guest house and began sharing professional publications featuring sustainable design. Elena observed his methodical work habits mirroring her own organizational tendencies and initiated conversations about efficient systems. Still, distinct boundaries remained. They existed in parallel rather than integrated lives, connected by circumstance rather than choice, mutual respect gradually replacing suspicion. The first significant shift occurred during Elena's 28-week ultrasound appointment. Alexander had respectfully maintained distance from medical visits, providing transportation but remaining in waiting areas unless specifically invited to participate. For this comprehensive scan, Elena made an unexpected request. "Would you like to join me?" she asked as they arrived at the specialist's office. "They'll be doing detailed measurements today." Alexander's carefully maintained composure faltered momentarily, genuine emotion breaking through professional courtesy. "I'd like that very much." The examination room's clinical environment faded to insignificance as the technician applied gel to Elena's prominent belly and positioned the ultrasound wand. The monitor flickered, grainy images resolving into recognizable forms. Two distinct profiles, delicate spines curved in parallel arcs, tiny hands and feet moving in synchronized dance. "There they are," the technician announced. "Twin A and Twin B, identical girls developing perfectly." Alexander's breath caught audibly, theoretical understanding of impending fatherhood transforming into visceral reality as he watched his daughters move within their mother's body. His hand instinctively reached toward Elena's before hesitating, uncertain of boundaries. Elena, witnessing his unguarded reaction, made a deliberate choice, bridging the careful distance by placing his hand against her belly where movement was strongest. The twins responded immediately, a firm kick pressing against his palm. "They're strong," he whispered, awe replacing his customary confidence. "They've been my strength," Elena admitted quietly. "On the hardest nights, feeling them move reminded me I wasn't alone." This simple truth, shared vulnerability rather than practiced courtesy, created the first authentic connection since their reunion. For a moment, they weren't billionaire CEO and former housekeeper navigating complicated circumstances, but simply expectant parents witnessing the miracle they'd created together. The technician captured measurements, confirming healthy development despite earlier stresses. "They're fighters," she noted approvingly. "Sometimes identical twins compete for resources, but these two are growing in perfect synchronization." Alexander and Elena exchanged glances, mutual recognition passing between them, their daughters already demonstrating cooperation rather than competition, perhaps wiser than their parents in navigating shared existence. Leaving the appointment, they walked together without the careful distance previously maintained. "Thank you for including me today," Alexander said simply. Elena nodded, acknowledging the significance of the shared experience. "They're yours too. That reality doesn't change regardless of circumstances between us." This fundamental recognition that their daughter's well-being transcended personal history established common ground from which trust might eventually grow. As Elena's pregnancy progressed, their cautious détente evolved toward genuine connection, not through dramatic gestures, but through revealed truths about each other's histories. One evening, Alexander found Elena reviewing architectural plans for Reed Innovation's community housing initiative, complex technical documents she studied with evident understanding. "Your background isn't typical housekeeping," he observed, curiosity overcoming courtesy. Elena considered deflection before choosing honesty. "I studied environmental engineering for 3 years at Berkeley before financial realities intervened. My parents died when I was 14, foster care until 16, emancipation and self-support since." The clinical recitation masked deeper history, but Alexander recognized the strength required to navigate such challenges while maintaining educational aspirations. "Yet you never mentioned this background during our conversations about sustainable design?" "Professional boundaries seemed appropriate," Elena replied. "My housekeeping position didn't require architectural knowledge, Your insights improved my conference presentation significantly, Alexander countered. Your education explains the technical understanding, but not the practical applications most academics miss. Elena allowed a small smile. Theory without implementation creates beautiful models that fail in reality. Living in diverse housing situations teaches practical considerations that computer models miss. This unexpected revelation prompted Alexander to share his own formative experiences, watching his father's small electronics business systematically destroyed by corporate predators, the ethical framework that shaped his business practices, his determination to create technology that served communities rather than exploiting them. Their conversations expanded beyond immediate concerns about the pregnancy, revealing aligned values despite vastly different circumstances. Both had navigated significant early challenges, both valued education and practical application. Both approached problems with methodical analysis rather than emotional reaction. Over subsequent weeks, Alexander witnessed Elena's remarkable adaptability, how she transformed the guest house into functional living space, maintained meticulous health regimens despite physical discomfort, and continued professional development through online courses despite her situation. Elena observed Alexander's dedication beyond business success, how he personally reviewed community impact assessments for new developments, maintained direct relationships with employees across organizational levels, and prioritized ethical considerations above profit margins when conflicts arose. These revelations occurred organically through daily interactions rather than formal discussions, authentic character emerging through consistent behavior rather than declared intentions. You're not what I expected, Elena admitted during a shared dinner in the garden between their separate residences. What did you expect? Alexander asked, genuine curiosity replacing defensiveness. Someone whose wealth insulated them from understanding struggle. Someone who solved problems with money rather than effort. Alexander considered her assessment. That description fits many of my peers, he acknowledged. I've worked to remain connected to real impacts of business decisions, sometimes successfully, sometimes not. Your Singapore expansion created 500 jobs with living wages and comprehensive benefits, Elena noted, surprising him with her knowledge of his operations. While your competitors outsource to facilities with questionable labor practices. You've researched my company. I research everything that impacts my children's future, she replied simply, including their father's values. This straightforward evaluation, neither flattery nor criticism but objective assessment, represented significant progress from their initial wariness. Trust began forming not through dramatic declarations but through consistent demonstration of character, the only foundation strong enough to support the unexpected family they were creating from complicated beginnings. 32 weeks into the pregnancy, Elena sat reviewing architectural proposals for Reed Innovation's sustainable housing project. Alexander had invited her professional input, recognizing her environmental engineering background brought valuable perspective to the development team. The twins had been active all day, their movement stronger than usual as Elena marked areas for improved water reclamation systems. A sudden tightening across her abdomen interrupted her concentration, uncomfortable but not alarming. Braxton Hicks' contractions had become frequent in recent weeks, her body practicing for eventual delivery. She shifted position, continuing her work as the sensation passed. 20 minutes later, another contraction gripped her midsection with unexpected intensity. Elena placed her pen down, breathing carefully through the discomfort while mentally timing the duration. As the tightness receded, she noted the time, a precautionary habit from her prenatal classes. By early evening, the pattern had become unmistakable, contractions arriving with increasing frequency and intensity, 15 minutes apart, then 12, then 10. Alexander found her sitting perfectly still at the kitchen counter, breathing methodically through another wave of discomfort. What's wrong? Concern edged his voice. Contractions. They've been happening all day. She tried to smile reassuringly. It's probably nothing. The doctor said to monitor anything regular. Alexander set aside the documents he'd brought for her review. How often? About every 8 minutes for the past hour. Seeing his expression, she added, It's still too early. 32 weeks isn't full term. Let's not take chances. His calm tone belied his racing heart. I'll call Dr. Winters while you gather your hospital bag. Elena nodded, acknowledging the wisdom and precaution despite her reluctance to appear alarmist. As she moved to stand, a sharp pain doubled her over, followed by a rush of fluid pooling at her feet. My water broke, she stated with remarkable composure given the circumstances. We need to go. Now. Alexander's response demonstrated crisis management skills honed through business emergencies, immediate action without panic. Within minutes, he had contacted the doctor, arranged hospital admission, and helped Elena to the car with practiced efficiency. The twins are coming early, Elena whispered as another contraction gripped her. Too early. Alexander took her hand, squeezing gently. Dr. Winters said 32 weeks is viable. Modern NACIs work miracles with premature twins. Let's focus on getting you there safely. As they drove through evening traffic, Elena maintained outward calm while mentally calculating risks, lung development, birth weight, potential complications. Alexander navigated with focused intensity, breaking his habitual adherence to traffic laws when necessary to reduce their journey time. Stay with me, he said when her breathing indicated another contraction. Almost there. Their carefully constructed boundaries, separate residences, formal interactions, emotional distance, dissolved in the face of immediate crisis. In this moment, they weren't complex adults navigating complicated circumstances, but simply parents united by concern for their children. The hospital's labor and delivery unit received them with practiced urgency, medical staff responding to the combination of premature labor and twin pregnancy with immediate intervention. Elena was quickly evaluated, monitoring equipment attached to track her vitals and the twins' heartbeats. You're already 4 centimeters dilated, the attending physician informed them after examination. We'll administer medication to slow contractions and steroids to accelerate the twins' lung development, but we need to prepare for potential delivery. Alexander remained at Elena's side, his usual commanding presence subdued into supportive partnership. When medical staff asked about his relationship, Elena answered without hesitation. He's the father. I want him here. The statement represented significant evolution from their initial reunion, acknowledgement of shared stake in the outcome rather than carefully maintained independence. Medication temporarily slowed labor progression, granting precious hours for steroids to improve the twins' lung maturity. Elena lay perfectly still between contractions, conserving energy while focusing entirely on the 2 heartbeats monitored on nearby screens. Their heart rates are strong and steady, Alexander observed, finding comfort in measurable data. That's positive. Elena nodded, grabbing his hand as another contraction began despite medication intended to suppress them. Talk to me. Distract me. Alexander began describing the sustainable nursery he'd prepared in the main residence, a room designed with natural materials, state-of-the-art air filtration, and sunrise simulating lighting systems. His detailed explanation served its purpose, giving Elena something to visualize beyond hospital walls and immediate concerns. 18 hours after admission, the medication's effectiveness waned. Contractions intensified despite intervention. An examination revealed Elena had progressed to 7 centimeters. The twins are coming today, the doctor confirmed. Their vitals remain strong, which is excellent news. Our NICU team is standing by, fully prepared for 32-week twins. Elena met Alexander's gaze, momentary fear visible beneath her composed exterior. I had plans, everything organized for their arrival. This wasn't supposed to happen for another month. Plans adapt, he reminded her gently, like you taught me. The simple acknowledgement of her influence on his thinking created unexpected emotional connection amid medical equipment and urgent preparations. They'd moved beyond politeness into genuine partnership, not through choice, but through necessity that revealed underlying compatibility. The delivery room buzzed with controlled activity. Additional medical staff present for the twin birth, NICU team ready with specialized equipment, monitors tracking multiple vital signs simultaneously. Elena lay focused and determined despite exhaustion from prolonged labor, her remarkable composure impressing even experienced medical professionals. You're fully dilated, the doctor announced. Time to meet your daughters. Alexander positioned himself beside Elena, his hand steady in hers despite his internal turmoil. You've got this, he encouraged. You're the strongest person I've ever known. The simple truth in his statement provided Elena final reinforcement as delivery began in earnest. Her focus narrowed to immediate action, years of self-reliance channeled into this critical moment. I can see the first baby's head, the doctor announced. One more push. Elena complied with extraordinary control, her body working in perfect coordination despite the pregnancy's premature conclusion. A small cry filled the room, surprisingly strong for a 32-week infant. Baby A is here, the doctor confirmed. Time of birth 2:14 p.m. The NICU team moved with practiced efficiency, whisking the tiny infant to a warming station for immediate assessment. Alexander caught only glimpses, a perfect miniature face, impossibly small fingers, dark hair matted against delicate skull. 3 pounds, 9 ounces, a nurse called out. Good color, spontaneous respiration. Before Elena could process this information, contractions resumed for the second delivery. 7 minutes later, an identical cry announced their second daughter's arrival. Baby B born at 2:21 p.m. the doctor noted. "Let's get her assessed quickly. Pounds, 1 ounce," came the report. "Strong vital signs." Have you ever experienced that moment when life changes forever in an instant? When challenges reveal strengths you never knew you had? If this story of unexpected courage is touching your heart, hit that subscribe button and join our community. Drop a comment, sharing your own story of facing the unexpected. We're all stronger when we share our journeys. The twins were briefly presented to their parents' tiny faces, barely visible amid medical equipment, before being transferred to the NICU for specialized care. Alexander watched them depart with unconcealed emotion, years of practice control abandoned in the face of primal connection. "They're perfect," he whispered, eyes never leaving the incubators as they were wheeled from the room. "They're fighters," Elena agreed, exhaustion evident, but determination undiminished, like their mother, and strategic like their father, Alexander added. The first acknowledgement of shared traits that might appear in their daughters. This small moment of connection, recognizing themselves in their children, bridged remaining distance between them more effectively than months of careful interaction had achieved. The NICU presented an environment unlike anything in either parent's experience, a clinical world of incubators, monitoring equipment, and medical terminology that transformed tiny patients into collections of measurements and assessments. Alexander and Elena entered this domain as complete equals, both equally vulnerable in their concern and equally determined in their advocacy. Aria and Luna Reed, Elena had named them immediately, asserting their identities beyond medical designations of Baby A and Baby B. The names represented her independent choice, yet she'd selected Reed as their surname without discussion, acknowledgement of family connection beyond legal requirement. "They're doing remarkably well for 32-week twins," the neonatologist explained during their first comprehensive briefing. "Both breathing independently with minimal oxygen support. Aria's slightly smaller but compensating with determination. Luna's larger but requiring more temperature regulation." Alexander absorbed medical details with the same focused attention he applied to business acquisitions, asking clarifying questions, requesting specific data, establishing measurable objectives. Elena approached the situation with practical problem solving, learning care protocols, understanding monitoring equipment, establishing communication with nursing staff. Their complementary approaches created comprehensive understanding of their daughter's situation. Technical knowledge combined with practical application, detailed oversight with personal connection. During the twins' first 40 to 8 hours, they established unspoken rotation, one always present in the NICU while the other managed necessary outside responsibilities. They exchanged information with the efficiency of long-term partners, each trusting the other's observations and judgment without question. On the third evening, the charge nurse found them together beside the incubators, Alexander reading medical journal articles about premature development, while Elena updated the care log she'd created to track the twins' progress. "You two should get some rest," she advised. "They're stable. We'll call immediately if anything changes." Neither moved, both unwilling to leave despite logical arguments for self-care. The nurse recognized the particular intensity of new parents navigating medical crisis, the need to maintain connection through proximity when other forms of caretaking remained impossible. "There's a family room down the hall," she offered instead. "Reclining chairs, private space. You could take turns getting some sleep while staying close." This compromise satisfied their shared need for proximity while acknowledging physical limitations. In the quiet family room, exhaustion finally overcame Elena's remarkable endurance. She drifted to sleep in one of the recliners, Alexander maintaining watch nearby. Studying her sleeping form, Alexander fully recognized the extraordinary strength she'd demonstrated throughout pregnancy, homelessness, premature labor, and now the NICU experience. What had begun as abstract responsibility toward the mother of his children had evolved into profound respect for the woman herself. When Elena woke hours later, she found Alexander sleeping in the adjacent chair, his hands still holding the medical journal he'd been studying. The man who commanded a global corporation looked surprisingly vulnerable in sleep, his protective facade temporarily absent. In that moment of shared vulnerability, both stripped of pretense by concern for their daughters, the final barriers between them dissolved. They weren't billionaire CEO and former housekeeper navigating complicated circumstances, but simply parents united by love for their children and growing appreciation for each other's strengths. The twins' premature arrival had accomplished what months of careful interaction could not, creating genuine partnership forged through shared crisis rather than negotiated agreement. The garden behind the main residence bloomed with spring flowers, carefully arranged tables dotting the manicured lawn. A banner stretched between two oak trees proclaimed "Happy First Birthday, Aria and Luna," in elegant script. The celebration was intimate, Just family and close friends gathered to commemorate not only the twins' first year but the remarkable journey that had brought them all together. Alexander stood at the grill, surprisingly comfortable in the role of host rather than executive. Nearby, Elena arranged cupcakes on a tiered stand, each one decorated with the twins' initials. Their eyes met across the garden, shared understanding passing between them without words needed, a language developed through months of partnership. "They're plotting their escape again," Alexander observed, nodding toward the playpen where Arya and Luna demonstrated their newly mastered climbing skills. Elena laughed, the sound free and genuine. Arya creates the diversion while Luna tests the barrier. Their coordination is frightening. The twins, identical in appearance but distinctly individual in temperament, had thrived despite their premature beginning. After 3 weeks in the NICU, they had come home together. Arya slightly smaller but fiercely determined, Luna larger but more contemplative. Their personalities had emerged with increasing clarity over the months, providing daily confirmation that nature and nurture worked in fascinating combination. The guest list reflected the unconventional family they'd created. Alexander's parents, now devoted grandparents who visited weekly. Elena's former shelter roommate, now employed as the twins' part-time nanny, the NICU nurses who had become friends during those critical early weeks, and colleagues who had supported both parents' evolving partnership. "If someone had shown me this scene a year ago," Elena mused as she joined Alexander by the grill, "I would have thought it impossible." "Which part?" he asked, flipping burgers with surprising skill. "That I'd learn to cook, or that we'd figure out how to be a family?" "Both," she admitted, "especially considering where we started." Their beginning, a chance reunion at a construction site after months of separation and miscommunication, seemed almost fictional compared to their current reality. The journey from that moment to this celebration had transformed them both in ways neither could have anticipated. With the twins' health stabilized and childcare arrangements secured, Elena had returned to university 6 months after their birth, completing her environmental engineering degree with honors while maintaining her role as mother. Alexander had adjusted corporate schedules around family needs rather than the reverse, demonstrating commitment beyond financial support. Most significantly, Elena had joined Reed Innovations, not as accommodation to their personal connection, but based on genuine merit. She now headed the company's sustainability division, bringing practical implementation expertise to theoretical environmental initiatives. The Beijing project estimates came in, she informed Alexander as they served food to their guests. "Your water reclamation system will reduce usage by 63%. Our water system," he corrected. "Your redesign made the difference." Their professional relationship maintained clear boundaries despite their personal connection. Elena reporting through appropriate channels, her work evaluated by objective metrics rather than personal consideration. This separation preserved her hard-won independence while allowing their complementary skills to enhance mutual goals. "The board approved your community implementation proposal," Alexander added. "Construction begins next month." Elena nodded, satisfaction evident in her expression. The initiative would bring sustainable housing technologies to low-income communities, combining her environmental expertise with social impact. What had begun as theoretical university projects now approached actual implementation, her vision expanding beyond academic exercise to practical application. "From homeless to heading a division in 12 months, observed her former shelter roommate, now happily employed and housed. "You always said education would make the difference." "Education and opportunity," Elena clarified, exchanging meaningful glances with Alexander, and recognizing which battles matter. After the guests departed and the twins were settled for the evening, Alexander led Elena to the garden terrace. The setting sun cast golden light across the bay, illuminating the skyline where their story had begun. "I've been thinking about how we met," he said, taking her hands. "How random chance brought us together twice." "Not entirely random," Elena smiled. "You do own half the city. Fair point." He laughed before becoming serious again. "But finding you that day, that was nothing short of miraculous. It made me realize something important." "What's that?" "That some connections are too powerful to be coincidental." He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small box. "I don't want to leave anything else to chance." Inside lay a sapphire ring surrounded by tiny diamonds. "It reminded me of your eyes the morning I found you determined despite everything." Elena's breath caught. "Alexander, I'm not asking because of the twins or because it's expected. I'm asking because loving you has taught me more about courage and integrity than any business success." He knelt before her. "Elena Martinez, will you marry me?" Her answer was immediate. Yes, 1,000 times yes. As he slipped the ring onto her finger, Elena reflected on the journey that had brought them here. From luxury hotel suite to homeless alley to this moment of perfect joy, their story defied convention yet made perfect sense to her heart. If this story has touched your heart, please subscribe to hear more tales of unexpected love and second chances. Hit that like button and share with someone who needs to be reminded that life's most beautiful stories often come from its most challenging moments. Comment below with your own experience of finding connection in unexpected places. I read every single comment and love hearing from you. Later that night, curled together watching their daughters sleep, Alexander whispered, "What are you thinking?" "About second chances," Elena replied. "How sometimes life's greatest challenges lead to unexpected blessings, like finding you again. Like finding each other," she corrected gently. "And ourselves in the process." Their journey had transformed them both. Alexander had discovered purpose beyond success, learning that control and power meant little compared to partnership and family. Elena had maintained her independence while accepting connection, recognizing that receiving help didn't diminish her strength but multiplied it. The lessons emerged not from dramatic declarations, but through daily choices. Alexander rearranging board meetings to attend pediatrician appointments. Elena accepting support while contributing equally in different ways, both placing their daughter's needs above pride or convenience. Most importantly, they'd learned that family isn't defined by conventional beginnings, but by commitment to shared future. Their unusual path, from brief encounter to CO parents to partners to engaged couple, had allowed genuine connection to develop without external pressure or artificial timelines. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't inspected that construction site that particular morning?" Alexander asked. Elena considered the question. "I believe we would have found each other eventually. Some connections are meant to complete themselves." The sentiment wasn't mystical but practical. Recognition that qualities drawing them together would likely have created other opportunities for reunion. Their compatibility wasn't circumstantial but fundamental, based on aligned values rather than convenient timing. As moonlight filtered through the nursery window, illuminating their sleeping daughters, Elena and Alexander contemplated the family they'd created from unexpected beginnings. Twin girls who shared their determination and resilience, a partnership built on mutual respect rather than conventional romance, a future constructed thoughtfully rather than inherited or assumed. Their story carried wisdom neither had anticipated learning, that true wealth isn't measured in bank accounts but in connections that sustain through hardship, that dignity deserves respect regardless of circumstance, that family can emerge from the most unexpected beginnings, and that love, when given space to grow naturally, can bridge worlds that seem impossibly distant. For Elena and Alexander, the journey from chance encounter to conscious partnership had transformed them both. The billionaire had discovered meaning beyond achievement, while the woman who had lost everything had found strength she never knew she possessed. Together they'd created something neither could have built alone, a family founded not on obligation but on choice, not on convenience but on commitment, and not on chance but on love strong enough to overcome every obstacle.